Welcome to the Indie Author Showcase. I'm your host, Chad Robert Morgan, and today we have
Erin Louis. I am an author of some thriller novels, a little bit of smut, which we will probably hear about today. Also, I delve into a lot of like dark humor, tad bit of horror, and I actually started writing nonfiction. So you can find all of my books at my website, erinlouis.com. Also Amazon. I'm on Blue Sky, Facebook, and Instagram and TikTok very reluctantly.
not a fan of the TikTok, I take it.
I just don't really like the medium. So it's not that I really have an opinion one way or the other. It's just, it's not a place that I spend a lot of time. Same thing with Facebook and Instagram, really all of them at this point. But yeah, TikTok is just kind of my least favorite. It always hits me with something stupid when I open it. And I'm always like, I just try to get on it, check my inbox, post something if I have something to post, and then just like get off. So just, I don't know. It's not fun for me.
Do me a favor after the interview, let me know what your Blue Sky handle is, because I have a starter pack, which is all the indie authors that we've showcased here at the showcase. So if anybody's on Blue Sky and they want to quickly see any of the authors that we've talked about here on the podcast, if they're on Blue Sky, just automatically follow them all.
My handle across everything is Erin Louis 666. So nobody seems to pick that one anywhere. So it's pretty much like universal. So I feel left out in that respect.
So let's talk a little bit about when we first met. We've only met once. It was at HorrorCon. By the way, we are starting a support group for survivors of HorrorCon. You were with a publisher, I believe you said Hellbound Books?
Correct. James Longmore of Hellbound Books, yes.
Funny thing about that is I was listening to another podcast, mutual friend of ours, I believe, the Sex and Horror podcast. They were talking to him, and I think he's the only person in the world that actually enjoyed HorrorCon because he was exuberant about the whole thing.
Oh, I tell you what, we had a really good time. With the exception of the hotel which I booked. James is actually from Britain. He's been here for about 14 years. Moved to Texas and stayed there. So when we came up with the idea to go to HorrorCon, he was kind of excited. It was his first time to California. I grew up in Southern California, so it's pretty familiar, but not like I grew up in Orange County, so I wasn't really familiar with like LA proper. So in an effort to kind of be a little frugal, because I was booking on behalf of somebody else, and obviously we were selling things, so I wanted to keep our costs down. I booked a really, really, really horrible hotel. So poor James was subjected to literally the worst and probably the most frightening place I think I've ever stayed like overnight. It was kind of eye-opening. So anyway, I ended up taking him to the Santa Monica Pier before, I can't remember if it was Sunday or Saturday, before the con actually opened. So that was cool. He got to see it before it burned down. So, yay. I actually got to feed him real Mexican food too, because they don't have like real Mexican food in Texas that I'm aware of anyway.
The HorrorCon we met, the Sunday was really dead because it happened to be right next to, in the same convention center as, I think it was the Emmys. Was it the Emmys or the Grammys?
I think it was the Emmys.
So traffic was completely dead on Sunday. So, yeah, that was like my second time, and I'm like, I think I'm done with that one for now. Do you have any conventions coming up?
I don't actually right at the moment. I did do a really tiny little one up here by me called On the Fringe, which was kind of fun. A lot of like crystals and handmade pipes and paddles and some other interesting things. So that was a fun little thing to do. It's kind of hard to do conventions, at least for me, because I have so many like books. You got to get them there, and then you got to get yourself there. So the two that we found in 2024 was StokerCon in San Diego, which I did on behalf of Hellbound, but I did by myself. Much better hotel in San Diego. Uh, so that just kind of made it convenient. So out here on the West Coast, I guess I'm having a hard time finding like convenient conferences to get to.
For horror, I can give you a good list.
Yeah, just well, see, and I'm always looking at that because I'm always in like the indie author space, and so I always see conventions. And the co-author of actually my first novel with Hellbound, called Stripper Noir, is over on the other coast, and like I still haven't met him. I've known him for years now, and he goes to conventions all the time, but they're all like over, on the wrong side of the country. So, but yeah, definitely. If you have some that are easy to get to in my area, I'd be happy to take a look.
I don't know about Northern California yet. The closest that I found, there is Carrier Con, which is on the USS Hornet, and I believe I haven't tried that one yet. I've been wanting to, just as an old Navy guy myself. I want to get on the Carrier. And I am doing Hot Mare Expo in about 2 or 3 weeks, which is in Fresno, which is about in between you and me right now.
Yeah.
But Southern California's got a glut of them. We got WonderCon is a great place for indie authors. They have a whole section just for indie authors. And it's all genres, horror, sci-fi. There was one booth selling futanari porn. I mean, you name it, it's there. There are at least 3 major horror conventions, which is Monsterpalooza, followed by Son of Monsterpalooza in October. We got Creep IE, followed by Creep IE Aftermath in September. And then we have Midsummer Scream, which is probably the biggest in terms of volume. So 3 big ones right there that are great, plus WonderCon for more of a general vibe. So totally, yeah, I would recommend any of those if you want to get in there. Especially since Monsterpalooza just created like this more of an artist-friendly space. So instead of a full booth, you can just get a table. So you can kind of, yeah, because Monsterpalooza is a little bit pricey in terms of a booth fee, but they got a whole section for tables now. And they did something clever where they put a stage on the far end of that. So people had to go to where the stage was to see different talks and everything like that. So they had to kind of go through all the vendors to get there. And they're kind of like the way Disneyland puts a gift shop at the end of the ride kind of thing. So it's pretty clever. They got a lot of traffic on that. So enough about me blabbering. We're not here to listen to me. We're here to listen to you. I've taken enough time. So let's talk a little bit about the book we reviewed on the podcast, Dirty Thoughts and Awkward Boners. There were 2 short stories in that, it was kind of a 2-parter, right? A part 1 and part 2, which I think was the only one that was fiction. And that was the one where I guess she turned out to be a succubus and she partnered up with a demon and they teamed up kind of towards the end. That gave me my first taste of your horror vibe in those short stories. What is it about horror that attracts you to that?
Well, I started reading horror, Stephen King, probably obviously, in middle school. So middle school was not like my favorite time ever. I didn't have a lot of friends. I got picked on enough to where I kind of didn't like really want to have any friends. So I found a lot of comfort in the library and like books. And horror just happened to be what I gravitated to. And I'm not sure why I chose that particular like genre of escapism, but that's really what it was for me. I guess when I was like younger, before Stephen King, it was Lois Duncan. So that's the lady that wrote I Know You Did What You Did Last Summer, which I think about it now and I'm like, God, that was terrible. I read like Flowers in the Attic and stuff, which of course was just like super twisted, especially when you're going through puberty. So I I guess I'd probably have to ask like my therapist what drove me to that particular genre, but for whatever reason, I found comfort in it.
So a lot of that book, and from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of your horror books um, tend to get very spicy. That, I guess that's the code word to keep from being shadow banned on Instagram. Sounds like we're talking about jalapenos or hot peppers or something.
Yeah, I don't know. They just, they just keep banning me anyway. So it does. And I see like way worse stuff, which really kills me. It makes me think that their real issue is books, but that's my own like conspiracy theory there.
That in itself brings up kind of where I was going to this, a slightly off what I was going, but kind of in the ballpark. How does that affect your ability to find sales and market? I know, like when I've talked with Dicey or with Raven Belasco, who also has a kind of a very spicy vampire novel that we reviewed. When I used to do this show with my son, who is about 17, he was like totally not into that, which in my mind blows my mind, because when I was that age, I couldn't get enough spicy content. His generation seems to be very like not into that at all. Like they would rather play Roblox or something. It's like, okay, don't get it, but okay. Does that cause any? Are you seeing, like, for example, your clients running older, or are you finding audience of more of the 18 to 24-year-olds? Are you finding maybe it shifts by region? Like do you find it harder to find sales in the, say, Southern California here in Orange County, where it's a little more conservative than, say, Northern California? Or are you not seeing really any effect of that at all?
It's hard to say because I don't have, especially my books that are through the small presses. I don't really have, or I'd never thought to ask the actual like demographic data of where I'm selling. I know when people reach out to me personally, I can tell on my follower list. So I'm not sure how much that affects it. I don't have a lot of, I don't think I do tend to get a lot of younger people in particular. So I guess I never noticed until now. I do think I tend to trend probably more middle age. But the book that you read, Dirty Thoughts, was kind of outside what I usually write, or what I had published in the past, and I hadn't actually planned on publishing it the way that it came out. My other books that are a little spicy, the one that is about a succubus who at first her human partner thinks she's a ghost, and all that kind of stuff. A lot of the spicy scenes are really more kind of suggestions and like alluded to. It's not like the blatant like graphic explanations that I have in Dirty Thoughts. And the real reasoning behind that is because those short stories all came from when I had a Patreon page. And when I started stepping out into social media after I published my first two nonfiction books on my time as an exotic dancer, I had customers that I worked with that I worked, that would come into the club that followed me, and then I ended up, having a certain demographic that sort of followed me, and they suggested I get an OnlyFans. I have a 20-year-old son who's probably sounds a little like how your son is, where he's never that I know of had a lot of interest in that kind of stuff. However, he was horrified knowing what I did before at that kind of a thought. So he basically threatened me with, finding him hanging from the rafters if he found out I had an OnlyFans page. So Patreon felt like the happy medium, because they don't really allow like really a lot of like graphic, porn or anything like that, right? So I thought, okay, well, I can write a spicy story, and then I would also add like a picture or two, tasteful, topless or nude or something like that. And then I charged quite a lot for my Patreon because it wasn't content that I was sure that I really wanted out, like kind of just generally. So I really wanted it to be exclusive. So I never really had a lot of Patreon followers. But actually getting back to kind of what you're talking about as far as like the censorship goes, a lot of my early posts were flagged by the moderators, by the admins, right? And so I went back and forth with them, and not like I wasn't upset by it. I had no problem following their rules. I just wanted to be real clear as to what I could post and what I couldn't post. So everything, we came to an agreement on everything. Everything was cool. Everything, flew for about a year and a half. And then I started to get flagged again with threats saying you need to take this content down or we're going to, get rid of your page. And I was like, well, like we already went through this and I don't mind following your rules. I actually signed up for this particular platform because of your rules. I wanted those in place. But now they're fighting me and they're questioning on stuff that had already been approved. So at that point, I got kind of annoyed because I was like, well, this is what I promised my followers. This is what I've built just a modest following on. And now you're telling me I can't do that anymore. So I shut the page down. And when I did that, I took all those stories and that's when I published them on my own. So it kind of came about, really blossomed from my disdain for authority and censorship than anything else, particularly because I was actually really trying to stay within their rules and I failed. And when it comes to like marketing my books, even my first book, Dirty Money, which is basically my memoir, it's basically my story from when I was a kid, up until fairly recent. And it's called Dirty Money. And for some reason that'll get flagged as porn, or they think I'm offering sex services. I get that one a lot too, which is odd because it's like literally a book and there's nothing spicy in there. There's no like sex. It's really just my life in the industry. So it's kind of frustrating because I've gotten shadow banned, which I didn't even know was a thing. I've had my stuff flagged for taken down, but yet I get bombarded with AI images of like half naked chicks all the time. So like if I post like a promotional photo or a photo that's kind of risque, it really drives me absolutely bonkers that it will just completely get flagged as porn or some kind of obscene thing when I see all sorts of other content creators. And so that's like where if I put on my tinfoil panties, that's where I feel like it's books. The problem is books. They don't want people to read. That's my own little theory.
I've had a similar problem with my latest book, which isn't, well, it's got a little bit of spice in it, but it's not a major part of the book. It's just got a sprinkling of spice. But I was trying to do Amazon ads and they went, yeah, no. And just by looking at the cover, right? And I'm like, okay, tie my hands a little bit more. Why don't you? And this is also one reason why I started the podcast, because when you go to a place like WonderCon, where you just have rows and rows of indie authors and we're all just trying to do the same thing, just please take a look at our book and try us out. The goal was for us to work collaboratively to help lift us up because we got a lot of headwinds. We don't have like the PR that Stephen King's going to have. We don't have the name recognition. We don't have a major publisher bankrolling our PR firm. So all we got is ourselves and each other. So hopefully this will help get over that censorship hump there. That I would imagine it is even more difficult considering some of the content in some of the books. Like I think you mentioned at one point when I left the review, because that's one thing the podcast we do now is when we do a review, we leave a 5-star review on Amazon, and a couple of them I did have to try 2 or 3 times because Amazon didn't like the review because it had too many keywords that it flagged or something. I don't know. So I had to rewrite it once or twice. But when I wrote the review for Dirty Thoughts and Awkward Boners, you were saying, thank you, because that one doesn't get as much play as some of the others. So how do you go about trying to market something, considering that social media is trying to not let you market something like that? You know what I mean? We obviously don't want to get shadow banned or anything like that, or kicked off the service, but you still have a book to sell. So how do you juggle that?
To be honest, and really from like Jump Street, my least favorite thing about writing is marketing and like self-promotion. In fact, I was really terrible at that as a dancer. I was the one that kind of stood up against the wall and like waited until I saw somebody, that looked like they might be interested, or waiting for somebody to come up to me. I was really bad at like going in and working the crowd and like selling myself. I hated doing that part. That part sucked. Like being on stage and like getting to perform, that was one thing, because, I'm not, I don't have to speak. I'm able to kind of, um, just be out there without actually having to like get in there and, feel like a vacuum salesman trying to be like, hey, So I'm really terrible at self-promotion, and mostly just because I hate it. And so when it comes to marketing my books, when I first started, I kind of hit the ground running, and I'd actually built up quite a big, I was coming up on 10,000 followers on Twitter. So I was pretty excited about that. For whatever reason, that was just an easier platform for me to like connect on. So I sold a lot of books that way. And then the third book that I wrote is, it's nonfiction, and it's about my life as an exotic dancer, but it's also a book on critical thinking, humanism, and like debunking pseudoscience and things like that. So it's nonfiction, but my contributing editor had a lot of great contacts in the secular community. So a lot of my early podcasts and like interviews and things like that were done in that space. So I built up a following there, but a lot of that was like personal connections. In fact, that book, not to like name drop, but because I was in that realm, and my editor was like, "Oh, you should message Penn Jillette. He would love this, of Penn and Teller." Right. And so after bombarding him with email after email after email, I finally badgered him into reading my book and was able to get a blurb from him. And then organically he read the serial killer book, Stripper Noir, and gave me a blurb there too. But it was really somebody else's like connections and contacts that got me in that realm. But once I built kind of a, at least a little bit of a base or a platform, I was like, what I really want to write is fiction. And so that was when I really started doing that. And then that's when I understood how difficult trying to promote and sell a book is. And so honestly, I post a little bit here and there. I enjoy much more connecting with people in person, or even just more one-on-one when it comes to the social media platforms. As it stands right now, I don't get a lot of like weird DMs. I usually get a lot of really nice, respectful DMs. And so I'm super happy to interact with people in that way. But as far as like promoting, I mean, if I'm just going to be completely honest, I pretty much gave up. I don't buy ads anymore. Because I've wasted a ton of money that way, and I haven't gotten anything out of it. So outside of my publishers and posting a few books here and there, I really just have kind of stopped like really hitting that promotion aspect. Because I mean, it's not why I wanted to be a writer. If somebody said I had to be an influencer to actually be a writer, I probably wouldn't have written anything at all.
As the publishers that you're working for, have they been really good at marketing the book?
Well, Dirty Thoughts, ironically, is self-published, but it is also my bestseller, which is also ironic that it doesn't get a lot of reviews. But it's funny because people do message me about that book. But they really are cool about it. They are really cool about it. So like I said, I really count myself lucky that I haven't gotten a lot of weirdness, but I really haven't. But I don't know, my bar may be different just because of what I did though, I suspect. Um, but yeah, Hellbound has been okay. You know, they helped me, or they basically got me to StokerCon, which was cool. Where I actually, again, ironically, met another publisher who I'm working with on an upcoming project. Just published a short story with them. Um, they're probably a little more horror oriented than some of the dark humor. So I am hoping that I'll, they'll promote a little bit more. So I don't know. Maybe in the end, I'm just lazy.
So you talked about this new publisher. Are you still going to be with Hellbound? And just is this like are you going to kind of work with both publishers, or are you leaving Hellbound for this other publisher? Or
You know what? I don't mind getting around. Um, so I have Hellbound published my first fiction novel, co-written with a friend of mine named Armin Rosamilia. Not sure if I'm saying his name right, but I kind of don't care. So he's the one that actually submitted and did all the work there as far as getting it published. And then Hellbound published my book called South of Heaven, which they just published this sequel, Hell Awaits, and yes, those are Slayer references. That's more like dark humor. Currently, I'm working on the third book in that series, which they've already agreed to publish when it's ready. Um, Winding Road Stories is the publisher that I met at StokerCon, and they just put out a short story in their All Roads Lead to Hell anthology. My story is called Bob's Descent. Um, and then we are working on a novel together that's going to be in the editing stages here pretty shortly with them. So I don't know, neither one of them seem to be annoyed that I'm, working simultaneously. So
it's always good to have a job that lets you moonlight. Uh, uh, Trust me, I got a day job that allows me to do this amongst other things. So,
oh, me too, definitely.
sorry, thinking back a little bit to more of the novels you're working on. Um, we've talked a little bit about Dirty Thoughts and Awkward Boners because that's the one I read, and you mentioned your audience generally veers more middle age, which is probably why I read it. Uh, uh, Tell me a little bit more about your other novels, your more horror themed horror novels like what you have with Hellbound.
Well, Stripper Noir is about a stripper who's a serial killer. I write the part of that character. Armin writes the part of the detectives who are basically trying to catch her. So we switch POVs back and forth. Um, and it's centered in Las Vegas, which is why Penn liked it, or at least wanted to read it. And so basically, it's kind of like a cat and mouse, but you already know who the killer is, so you kind of go back and forth between them. South of Heaven was the next one I published with them, and that almost bridges the gap between my secular humanist nonfiction and I would say more dark humor than horror. And it's about an unbelieving stripper who, as she's dying, just says a quick prayer. It's basically like Pascal's wager. She's like, well, I might as well. I'm sure there's nothing there, but might as well give it a shot just in case. And so she ends up in heaven. Heaven is terrible. They only have Christian rock, Striper, um, and they have no genitals, so that's also problematic for her. Her cat's not there, but heaven is full of dogs because all dogs go to heaven. So it's basically just like super blasphemous. There's definitely some spicy scenes in there, but they're not graphic like Dirty Thoughts. Um, and then a book that I wrote after that is called Colleen, and that's my succubus. I have a girl who's kind of lonely, and she ends up inadvertently summoning what she thinks is a ghost, who turns out to be like her best friend ever. They have a non-platonic relationship, but also that is more like It's more like shadow spicy. I really don't delve into it. That one also kind of delves into some of my critical thinking history of writings. My succubus has a taste for conspiracy theories. And so they end up getting wrapped up into this whole like mystery that they think is a big deal, then it's not. Um, and then later on, that character finds out that that's not a ghost, it's succubus, and that explains why all these people around her are dying. And my succubus is like, I really didn't mean to, but it just keeps happening. And so anyway, they have to sort that out too. And then Hell Awaits is my sequel to South of Heaven, which just came out most recently. That one, basically, my character continues on. She had made it to hell, so she's friends with Satan. That one actually opens with an orgy in hell. So it's not too. I'm wondering if now I feel like I was trying to be careful, and I feel like I'm probably saying all sorts of stuff. Maybe you can like believe it. uh, but that one, yeah, that one kind of opens that way, and then the third one, I'm about third way done. That one's going to be called Rain and Blood. Again, Slayer reference. So,
See, now I wish I had read The South of Heaven because as much as I enjoyed Dirty Thoughts and Awkward Boners, I didn't get a sense of your dark humor. And just the idea of going up to heaven and there's nothing but Slayer up there.
Well, Stripper.
Or Stripper, sorry, Stripper.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's almost like the South Park one where you go up there and it's nothing but Mormons. Because
Yeah,
apparently that was the right.
a lot of and a lot of my vision of heaven was really inspired by I learned more about religion when I entered the non-religious community than I did when I was raised Catholic. And I learned that Jeffrey Dahmer apparently had repented and was saved on death row. So that book really kind of sprouted from that idea of what would it be like if you went to heaven and you have like Jeffrey Dahmer as your neighbor, right? Like, would you want to be up there with that dude? Probably not. And in fact, actually, there's actually a portion of Catholics that think that Hitler went to heaven also, which I also find really problematic. Like, would you really want to be up there? And then it's supposed to be this like perfect paradise. Well, would it kind of suck if everything was perfect, like all the time? If there was no like anything, like we would have nothing to compare it to. And then there's also the idea of if you get to heaven, but people you love didn't make it to heaven, they're in hell. So are you really going to be enjoying paradise knowing that you have loved ones in hell that are like, burning forever and being tortured? Like, you're just going to be up there, on your angel swing going, wee, this is fun. I mean, it makes you kind of a dick. So that's a lot of where that came from, was kind of exploring the ideas and really kind of the absurd ideas of heaven. And plus, you get to play God, forgive the pun. You get to really kind of construct anything you want out of the supernatural. So I don't know, maybe that is why I'm drawn to horror and things like that, is because you really get to take a lot of creative license as opposed to nonfiction where you have to be like honest.
So when I'm not writing horror, I tend to alternate because after writing Blood and Guts, I need a palate cleanser. So I write sci-fi raunchy comedy. It's sort of like if Star Trek was written by the guys from South Park. And in my second one, our heroes actually meet not their God, not yet, but I'm working on it. I'm working on it very hard. But that's the one where I tend to have all my dick jokes in. It is Intergalactic Space Force, so it's dick jokes in space for me. That's where I kind of can let loose a little bit.
Yeah, South of Heaven's a lot of butthole jokes. She gets a cat. They give her a cat in replace of her cat, who she hasn't figured out is in hell yet. And she discovers that she is able to give this heaven cat, who's really perfect, who didn't actually have a butthole. She was able to kind of wish him one, right? And once that happened, the cat discovers that he has this new thing and he wants to show everybody. So I have a lot of butthole jokes in South of Heaven also, which I mean, I happen to really like cats, so that was kind of where that came from. So yeah, there's a real strong butthole theme. in my heaven.
Sounds like a book I used to have, 101 Uses for a Dead Cat.
Oh, oh, I don't think we can be friends anymore. Just tell me you have snakes and I'm leaving.
No, I don't like snakes.
Oh, okay.
My mother is definitely fearful, and I think I inherited her phobia. I don't have it as bad as her. Like if they're in cages, I'm fine, but if it's out where it can touch me, I don't want anywhere near it. So
Yeah.
I'm not a snake fan. I just wanted to mention real quick because you were talking about religious jokes and all that. Because in ISF2, the main antagonists are the cherubs, and they're this alien race of the just the kind of sweetest little xenophiles you ever met in your life. And so the first one comes up and she says, my name is Betty. It says, the Lord Owl named me because I heard him speak to me. It says, if you be my bodyguard, I will be your long lost.
I get it. I get it. Yeah, I think one of the reasons that I kind of delved into, especially after writing Stripper Noir, which there's a couple of scenes in there that really like actually disturbed me to my core. Just writing was like, and even though I can read that kind of stuff, like actually writing it because you're picturing it in your head as it's coming out. And there was a lot of times where I had to go and like sort of recover and be like, I cannot believe I just wrote this. Like what demented part of my brain this came from. And when I started writing Salt to Heaven, I actually deleted like the first, I don't know, 15,000 words because it bugged me. I knew what I wanted to say, but it was so, I don't even want to say it was a negative, but there was a lot of like more horror elements in it. And I I didn't like it. It disturbed me, it bothered me. And so I kind of changed my voice in telling the story that I wanted to tell. And it all just, I found that as soon as I started to write something that was disturbing me, I would turn it into a joke. And I just sort of went from there. I was like, that's what I really enjoyed writing. So I thought, well, this is what I'm going to do. So while I still read primarily horror, even more recently getting into some more like splatterpunk, which I read on a plane, which was fabulous, except for the turbulence because then you get nauseous. Oh man, I wish I could remember the name of it, but it was great. It was so gory. And like that I can read, but it came to like writing it, actually come up with the ideas. I don't know, I freaked myself out. So I ended up just making a big joke out of everything, hence the cat buttholes.
I had a similar experience. We recently just did, speaking of splatterpunk, Aaron Beauregard's Playground, which, if you're into splatterpunk, it's a very well written book. If you're not into splatterpunk, stay the hell away from it because it is very unforgiving. And I didn't have a problem listening to it. I enjoyed the book, but like yourself, I'm like, I'm writing horror. Could I write something that intense and graphic? Because even for me, that was, I felt that was beyond my reach as a horror writer. My horror tends to be more, supernatural, monsters, haunting. That's just sort of my vibe. But I when you are looking for, either when you're writing humor or if you're writing horror, are there any kind of authors that you look at for inspiration or that you're trying to maybe mimic yourself off of? Like for me, when I do ISF, like I said, I picture it as, South Park meets Star Trek. So I'm inspired by that kind of humor that you see in Futurama and Lower Decks and stuff like that. And so I kind of try to channel that. When I'm looking at horror, I'm looking at more like Stephen King's It, or things more like say The Host, or more of a supernatural vibe versus say The Purge or anything like that. What are your inspirations? What are you looking for when you're looking to write?
I try really hard not to mimic people. I definitely don't want to sound like I'm trying to sound like somebody else. As far as inspiration, like when it came to my voice and actually writing, actually one of the reasons that my contributing editor of Expose Yourself, my book on humanism and critical thinking, um, that voice and that writing style that I have in that book, which is I think it's probably pretty consistent, was actually inspired by Penn's book, God No, Signs You Might Already Be an Atheist, because he's so blunt and so like just like there's no sugarcoating it. And sometimes it's like blunt to a fault almost, where it's like really, um, but I really enjoyed that because I didn't feel like somebody was blowing smoke up my ass. I really felt like it was just like raw. So I would say that my writing style was definitely inspired that way, both fiction and nonfiction. He actually has some fiction novels which are pretty cool out. Same type of voice. Definitely some things in there you wouldn't expect, especially from a magician. Was on Scooby Doo. I remember seeing it when I was like 10. I was like, oh, huh, this guy has a side I didn't know. As far as like the horror, I really like the creepy part of it. It can be hard for me because I've also done some writing and some other work in the skeptic community. CFI, the Center for Inquiry, has two magazines. One is Free Inquiry, which I actually was a contributor for. Their humanist magazine, and then also they have Skeptical Inquirer, which is actually one of my favorite magazines because it basically just debunks everything. So if you have like a favorite conspiracy theory or supernatural belief or something like that, this magazine will absolutely piss you off. So sometimes it's hard for me to suspend belief, even when I am writing, which I think is one of the reasons why I picked like the heaven hell context for at least my first, probably only trilogy, is because I got to like leave Earth and go someplace else where I really could feel more comfortable just writing a bunch of stuff that is very obviously ridiculous. Um, so I say that like when I'm reading or when I'm inspired, I am still working within that realm. So I tend to like authors that are more that don't necessarily rely on the supernatural to tell a story, even if there's some elements there, if that makes sense.
There's a book I'm listening to right now, which is a supernatural thriller, and it's not bad, but I do feel like the characters are very flat. And it's like you still have to start with the basics. A good story has to be a good story, regardless of it, if it's spicy or if it's horror or if it's sci-fi. You still need good, strong characters. You still need good plot development, at least in my opinion. But what do I know? I'm just silly old me.
A book that I actually had been on my to be read list for a while. I read it. I was really excited because it sounded like it was kind of supernatural. It kind of gave you it really alluded that it had something to do with ghosts and stuff. And I was really excited to read this book. And the more that I got into it, I started to understand. Okay, this is definitely not. It's not definitely not going to be supernatural, but I and I don't know if it was the character development itself or I don't think it was the writing style because excellent writer. The writing was great. Um, but I could give two craps about the characters. Like I just didn't care about them. And in fact, I ended up disliking all of them. And so, but you were supposed to root for one or the, you could definitely see where they were going, the emotions they were trying to, they wanted you to connect with like their main characters. And then they had the other people, which, were obviously not cool, but like the whole thing just was really off putting. Just the way the characters were developed. I didn't like them. I didn't care. I could care less when something bad happened to them. I'm like, well, I mean, you reacted badly. You're kind of a jerk anyway. Yeah, I'm not invested whatsoever. So I think definitely when I'm writing characters, I want to, if it's somebody I want you to hate, I want to make sure you hate them. If it's somebody I want you to like love and empathize with, and, no matter what their flaws are or whatever, kind of like my atheist stripper in heaven, she's definitely not perfect, but I want her to be an appealing somebody, just like my succubus. She's awesome, other than she just has a habit of killing guys. Oops.
Yeah, minor character flaw,
It's totally, but in essence, she's a good being.
Erin, it's been about 45 minutes. This is about the time I tend to wrap things up. So real quickly, tell people where they can find you.
The easiest place is my website, erinlouis.com. You'll land on all my books. My blog page has links to various articles and stuff that I've written for different outlets. And then I also have a bio page. It also has links to all of my socials, which isn't a lot. But I promise I'm not a jerk. If you're not a jerk, I don't mind talking to people. I am on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Facebook, all Erin Louis 666. Goodreads, of course, because that's actually probably my favorite social media, which is saying a lot, I think. Yeah, I think that's it.
Well, Erin, it's been a pleasure, and I look forward to hopefully I can talk you into coming down to one of these horror conventions down here in Southern California again. Not
we'll think
HorrorCon.
about it. We'll get together after, and I'll ask you some questions. You can help me find some, and I'm certainly willing. I just need to find some that are cost prohibitive. So.
Yeah, that one's a little bit more of a trick, but yeah, definitely we got a glut of them down here, and than HorrorCon. So until then, guys, keep on reading.